this. If you don't believe in God, you don't want to hear me tonight. Because God made everything possible. I don't know anybody, it may be some, that's still living that was captured with me. I don't know any. Some was captured later. I know some of them. But when we was captured, we was on the front line, right up close to the Yellow River. It was at night, dark. And if you don't know about North Korea, it's mostly mountainous. Now, I'm not talking about hills like we got in Alabama. I'm talking about mountains that it pops your ears when you go over them. Like you're riding in a plane sometimes. Your ears stop up. They stopped up. It took us one night from 5 o'clock till 2 o'clock to go over one mountain. 50 below zero. I want to go into some of the things that we had to do. We call this the Death March. I was captured November 1950. December the 1st, well, just before I was captured, my wife said I'd stay on this hill a long time. I'm proud of that because I stayed away from the enemy 3 days and 3 nights. Nothing to eat. I hadn't had anything to eat for 6, 7 days. I got thirsty. I told my wife. A lot of times she says, you stay on that lot. I'm thankful that I heard some water running. I thought it was a river. And I came off that mountain, me and 2 other fellows, all it was. And there's a little stream of water about that big around, running on a rock about that far down off of a rice paddy. And I heard that from the top of that mountain. And I drank water. And then there was a light come shining across. I mean, it lit up the whole thing. One of the fellows that was with us froze. Now, I'm not talking about, he was cold, but he didn't freeze like that. He just couldn't talk, he couldn't walk, he couldn't move, he couldn't do anything. He was there. And we had to drag him back up on the mountain. And by morning, he got where he could talk and all of that. But it scared him to death because we looked around and the Chinese had a headquarters right in front of us out there in that ravine. I stayed there 3 days and nights. And we come off, I told the boys, I said, tear your weapons apart. We had our weapons. Throw them all over. Don't leave a part where they can find them. That's what we was taught in basic. We tore them up. We came off of the mountain, and when I slid off that hill, the last time we had to slide off, it was steep. There was a 50 caliber machine gun. It ain't more big around than this in the barrel. I thought it was pointed straight at us. I said, fellas, are you ready to die? I said, just raise your hand and see if they'll take us. And they did. They come up and they took they stripped us. I had a little testament I should have brought that I got before I went overseas. And it was an open. I hid my watch. My wife had bought me a brand new watch. And I had it down the inside pocket, and that's the first place they went, and they got it. They stripped us of all our rings and everything. One boy couldn't get his ring off, and he was trying. He said, I can't get it off. This Chinese came up with a bayonet, and he said, I'll get it. He was going to cut his finger off, and he got the ring off. But anyway, they took us out and they put us in foxholes separately, us 3 men. I haven't seen those 2 boys since. They were deep. And we knew that had been known that they put you in foxholes and cover you up to here, and they stone you to death. We knew all of it. We didn't know what was coming. You know, being captured takes your dignity away from you. And it gives you where you don't know if you want to live or die. One of them told me, he said if you had been captured, he could speak English, one of them. 3 days ago, you would have been shot. Now, who kept me from them 3 days and nights when it was all, I never seen as many people around. Who kept me? Only the Lord can do this. Only the Lord can do that. And after they put us in foxholes, they left us all day. Still, nothing to eat. No water. They took us out at dark. It was dark. Might have been this time of the night. Took us to a mud house out there, and there was about 20 or 30 more in that house. And they said, we're going to feed you a little bit. After all this time, and I thought, boy, I'm starved to death. And I think it was gourds they boiled up. We couldn't eat it. It would just make you vomit. We went on and they said, we're going to feed you your breakfast and we're going to start on the march. And they parched us some corn. How many of you ever eat parched corn? I have when I was a kid growing up. Just take it and put you a little grease or butter in there and put your corn in it and make it brown. But they didn't have anything like that. They just parched it, and we had to put it in our pocket and we'd eat it. When we started out, the 1st of December 1950, we stopped several different places because the weather would get so bad and so cold, it was impossible to travel. We went to a mining camp. They put us in a room, and there lay a man. And I hate to tell you this, but he was froze all over, from head to foot. It's not a pretty sight. It's not easy talking. Well, when we got there, of all the people that picked me, said, you've got to boil this corn up, cracked corn. For that first year, cracked corn's all we had. No salt, no sugar, nothing but cracked corn. We started the march, the death march. That was people, my hands and wrists got so cold that I couldn't even move my finger at all. And I had my pants, and I put my hands in my pocket and got them warm enough that I could button my pants. I couldn't button my pants. I was so cold. When we'd get to a place and have to stop off, they started feeding us cracked corn balls. Looked like snowballs about this big. One in the morning and one at night. They was froze. We put them in our pocket and would march. We got to this place after the mining camp. They told me, said, you're gonna have to boil this stuff up again. And I sat out under a little old piece of tin with that pot. Ladies, they don't have no cookware over there like you do. They cook in wash pots this big around. You know how the older people, I remember when I was a kid, my mother used to boil clothes in them. Wash her clothes. That's what they cook in. One thing at a time. They don't have nothing but. North Korea has nothing, people. They don't have anything. The communist people will tell you, we're going to take care of you. We're going to take care of you, and you're going to work for us. Sounds good, don't it? Sounded good to me, but God opened my mind. Said, look around you. The children, they're protruding stomachs like we had, and they died. Every day, death, death. The women, their lifespan was 40 years when I was there. I don't know how, somebody said the other day it's just gone up to 60 in North Korea. Now South Korea, they're flourishing. During this march, they tell us from the ranks back then, there was about 3,000 after they get it all up. And you'd hear a shot. And they said, people don't fall out because they just shot another one. See, we were weak. Nothing to eat. We started losing weight. And we marched and stopped off at these places and got cold. And I'd sit up at night and rub my feet to keep them from freezing with my hand half of the night. A lot of men were so weak and couldn't, their feet and toes started coming off. We was at this place, I was out boiling the corn up, and a man about like your sheriff, about his size, came out there, and I said, where are you going? He said, I got to have some water. They had a little well out there, it was 4 foot deep, and all the water's polluted because they use human waste. He said, and I heard him cry out. I looked around and I was down in front of that fire trying to keep warm, stirring that thing in that pot. I asked him what was wrong, and he held his hand out like that and his big toe in it. I saw a man lose their limbs, their legs. Saw them froze all over them. Not only does it take your dignity away from you, you lose your pride. Actually, at some time or other, you wish that you would pass on. One man after we hit Choctaw Crib, how many has heard of Choctaw Crib? After marching that death march from December till February, and I don't know the date we got there, but we thought we're going to get something to eat. It was the same stuff. Some days we didn't get anything. But I found out a little over a year ago, it was on TV, that Choctaw Crib is the worst spot in the world. You may not, you can't visualize what I'm fixing to say. And you're going to ask me, I know you're going to ask me, how did you live through it? And I'm going to tell you up front, it was the prayers of the praying people that was praying for me. We got body lice. Those people are not clean. They was filthy. And those mud buildings were infested with body lice. I saw men's clothes working with them. They was men that died from it. And if this book up here, it'll tell you in there was a second lieutenant. Second lieutenant said he almost gave up. He said, I've lost my men, I lost my dignity. Said in the bed bugs, or I call them bed bugs, but body lice got so bad, it says in there that they got infected and our clothes started rotting off of us. We didn't get no clothes. He said, I smelled so bad, I couldn't stand myself. How would you like to go for about 4 to 6 months without a bath? Not a shave. Our beards was down. We looked like Santa Claus on that death march. You'd breathe and it'd freeze. You breathe out and it'd freeze. It was ice. When I hit Choctaw, we came down and we thought it was going to get warm, and the weather got colder. How many have ever been lonely? Say you was in a crowd like this. Would you get lonely? We did. To torment us to death, they got Bing Crosby, Frank Sinatra, and they put it on loudspeakers, and at Christmas time, they'd play White Christmas. I saw men so hungry that men would get dysentery and then these things would pass. And I said I wasn't going to tell this, but others would come along and pick them up and eat them. If they could find a rat, we had wood details and some found little crows. They come back and parched them over a fire. I didn't get any, I wanted some of them. They found 3 little crows and they brought them back. Way in the summertime, we got to bathe in the Yalu River. And I said, Choctaw Korea, they said on TV they had a woman that they were interviewing from that little town up there. Well, they call it a town. They didn't have anything. But she had made it to America. She was sold into slavery when she was 13. She couldn't read, write, or do anything. But she escaped there and went to South Korea. And this is when they told that, and she started getting her education. And she had finished college when they interviewed her here in the United States. All of you know what an outhouse is, don't you? Most people there got dysentery. You know what that is? This wasn't like ordinary dysentery. When you got it real bad, you didn't live. In my camp alone, the first winter, over 1,800 young men died, starved to death, and froze to death. Only God brought me out. We got down to 65, 70 pounds. And the doctors, when we got on the ship to come home, we had to go through the doctors. They said, you ain't supposed to be here. Anybody that was malnourished that much. And said, let me tell you something. Anything could happen to you during your life. You may have a short life. Thank God I'm still here. I can't say that for many, many more. I spoke over. I drove to Florida. I didn't drive. I flew. My boy went with me. This is a hard thing. Chung Wachuliagi, Masatong. One boy kept up with a lot of the death. He kept up with all of them. And he had little pieces of, we didn't get real paper. We had to take schooling. Communist, socialism and communist. You don't want either one of them. Socialism is like this. A surgeon asked me down in Birmingham the other day. She was sitting there with me. And they said, how does communism or socialism work? They didn't know how it worked. I said, well, they say you get to keep your money you make, but the government tells you kind of how to spend it. I'm going to get a lot of you now, and you'll be mad at me. I said, the best way I know to explain it is Obamacare. He looked at me. He's an educated man. I said, if you don't take out Obamacare, you pay a fine. If you don't trade where they want you to, you pay a fine. That's socialism. He turned around to my daughter and he said, you know what? He said, your daddy has told me, he wanted me to go through this from the beginning. And he asked me a lot of questions. And he called me a hero. I said, I'm not a hero. I stopped. I said, the heroes are laying over there. He said, no, you don't understand what a hero is. And I tell him it right. He said, a hero is someone that went through what you've gone through and is able to tell me about it. When he got through with that, he wanted to know what I did for a living when I come home. Well, I didn't tell him all where I'd work, but I told him right when I got on with ABMA, making missiles. I said I helped put the first missile in orbit. I helped put the first 3 men on the moon. And they made me pick me up crew, and we built. Let me stop right there. That's as deep. It was froze so hard, and we had those, they didn't have picks like we got. Crow, I buried a boy by myself. And as deep as I could get, it was 2 foot, 1 foot deep, 2 foot wide, 6 foot long. And the guard said, put him in there. I rolled him up in the best I could in his old worn out clothes. And you know, I got mad. The boy could have eaten what we did, but he gave up. And he said, I don't intend to eat, don't intend to drink no water. And he didn't. He had a college education. And he died laying across my legs. We were in little rooms, 10 by 10, up to 22 people in there. We had to set up a lot of times and lay our head over on each other's shoulders to sleep. After they started dying out, we had more room. But he wrote this poem, 6 foot by 2 foot by 1 foot deep. And this boy had a pair of dog tags on. And I was so angry at him for doing what he done that I got one of those dog tags and I took the old pig handle and I opened his mouth and I put it between his teeth and I drove it in there. Now, if they ever find that, they'll know who it is. On a Korean hillside they sleep, young and old, all wondering why 1,600 had to die. No little white cross with their name, but they are not buried in shame. Although they lie in an unknown grave, 1,600 American braves. No useless casket enclosed their breast, GI clothing for their last rest. All color of men, black, brown, and white, 1,600 faded lives. A pill, a powder, medicine of any kind. Or should we say, a stronger mind could have saved them from yonder hill, 1,600 lying still. In their illness, tossing and turning, most of them knew there would be no returning. Some went easy, some with pain. 1,600 died in vain. When we go home to enjoy our field, they're there on that lonely hill, forgotten by some, remembered by most. 1,600 in their last post. One day, it had got warm. They fell us out. We rang up. And here I am, the first one they jerked out of line. They said, your tonsils need to come out. I didn't have no problem with my tonsils. They picked out a couple of more, and I went up there and I sat in a chair built out of 2x4s. I laid my head in 2x4s like that. I held the pan, and he cut my tonsils out. It was a doctor they had called from mainland China. He was a good doctor. He had three cousins over here in the United States as doctors. He said, I would like to go and visit, but I knew he wanted to come to America. But he wasn't allowed to say that. After he got my tonsils out, he said, you're a strong man. Because he cut one of them out. He said, do you feel that? I said, yeah, but cut it out. He got it cut out. He took the pan. He said, now, can you walk up this hill? Where we had to stay in a mud house up there. And they had planks for our bed laid on the block. And a little bitty blanket stretched over. Not only that, on wood detail, I broke my inside of my nose with a limb falling on it. America has no record of my tonsils being out or that, and they operated on it in Birmingham to open up this because I couldn't breathe on one side. They said my records got burned. Said you would have another badge if you can show proof. I said, you had the proof, what do you do with it? But that made no difference. But the Korean War, I'm going to wind it up. I could tell you a lot of things that happened that we, not only these bed bugs, but people having their legs come off and their toes come off. One man told my wife a story, and I never told her that. He said he had lost his feet, hadn't he? And he said he was still living at that time. He's passed on now. He said, you know, my foot got infected. And you know what gets in it when it gets infected. He said, I wouldn't kill one of them maggots for nothing, because they ate away the poison. And he covered over. But he still lost the legs. Different things like that happened to us. And then when, as I said, dysentery, when it comes blood and water, you didn't make it. If you read in your encyclopedia, or you can pull it up on the internet, either one, it says this: the Korean War was one of the bloodiest wars in the history of time. There was 54,246 men that lost their lives in 3.5 years. Just think, 54,246. There was 103,284 wounded. We don't know how many of those died. MIAs and POWs, 8,177. And I thank God. And I thank the people that prayed for me that I made it home. And I was going to say, this woman, I married her right, we was engaged when I went over. And I married her when I come home. We've been married 64 years. Living that long with one woman. September 13th, we'll be married 64 years. And I still love her. You might have seen it on Facebook. She's the cause of it. They had a banquet up there at the church for Valentine's Day. And they wanted us to have a picture made, and I just grabbed her up and held her in my arms. They said, kiss her, and I kissed her. She put it on Facebook. But I had 4 children. March the 13th of this year, my boy will be dead 2 years. I went through all of this and lived through it. And now I'm still strong. But it like got me when my boy died. It's harder to lose a child. He would have been 54 in just about, 28 days. Thank you for having me. God bless you. And I hope you have a good night.